Hello and welcome. So today I am honestly so excited. I cannot tell you. I'm so excited to speak to Catherine. So we have been chatting a little bit on Instagram. I found you on Instagram initially, and I think I reached out to you. Catherine is also known as the Foxhill Witch. So if you do already follow her, you might recognize that name. Um, Her work has been such a huge inspiration for me. So, for a little bit of context, Catherine is an astrologer. I'm sure she's many other things. I feel like you're a manifesting generator as well. Is that right? Yeah.
That's true.
So I imagine you do more than this as well. Like you'll
Yep.
have lots of things you do. But how I know you is through astrology and through Instagram. And honestly, like the first thing that drew me to you was your branding. I like, because clearly, like, you've thought so much about it, and I'm such a sucker for like gorgeous branding.
Me
And
too.
I was just like, oh, this looks so good. It looks so wholesome, like so earthy. I really loved it. And obviously there's a Scandinavian kind of theme going on for you as well. My husband is Finnish, so I was like, so drawn to it. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I was just like, who is this chick? Like, I need to know. So yes,
Okay.
so I am hugely honored to talk to you today. Like, I cannot even tell you. So yeah, I'll give a little bit of context about what we were going to talk about. So we were kind of umming and ahhing, like we both work in this space of like tarot and astrology. What should we talk about? And I'll actually let you answer that question if that's all right.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for having me, first of all. I'm really, really excited to be chatting about what we're going to be chatting about, which is creativity. And I think it's wonderful that in your introduction, you already mentioned that you were sucked in to my world through my branding. And this is something I did put a lot of thought into. And it's an expression of my creativity, right? And I actually use my natal chart as inspiration for it, and outside input as well. So Scandinavian forest, which was like the key word for my branding, and I'd never felt more seen once I kind of landed on it. So I'm really, really, really excited to talk about how we can use astrology to understand our creative self-expression and how we can feel really at home and fulfilled through how we want to express ourselves, whether that's through formal artistic work or just as a normal human being that's creative. So that's going to be the topic today. Yeah, I'm going
I
to
love
give the mic back to you.
I love that so much that like just me mentioning that, the synchronicity of me mentioning that, and then that actually being how you use your chart, like that's just perfect. Like, and it really did work. Like, I mean, because that was the first thing I saw, obviously. And then once I kind of like clicked on your page, and then I was like, oh, I really like how you communicate. And something that really stands out for me with you as well is how accessible you make astrology for people, but not in a way that's like too dumbed down either. It's like a really like nice balance of like anyone can sort of understand this, but it does go into more depths as well. So it's not like the stuff that you're like, yeah, I kind of know that. Like there's really interesting takes that you have on it,
Mm,
and you do also like, this is certainly my bias, like the things you talk about are the things I am like most interested in, which is just
mm.
really like a
Not
lucky.
surprised.
Yeah. So yeah, like I know you've done loads of work previously to the creativity as well, which I know we're going to talk all about, around like life purpose and work and how you can look at your chart around that stuff. And for me, that's been like really huge and really helpful, because I think like you are clear on what it is that you are interested in and what you want to help other people with. And I just think that
Mhm.
shines through so well, and it's very clear who it's for and all of that stuff. So I love that. Really,
Oh,
really
thank you so
honestly.
much. Thank you.
Um, yeah, so with that in mind, what was it that kind of got you into all of this work in the first place? I'd love to know more about you because I'm just so fascinated with what you do anyway.
Oh, you're so sweet. Well, it's a bit of a weird story, not very straightforward, but nothing in my life has really ever been. If you had told me years ago that this would be my path or something that I would be working with in my mid 30s, I would not have believed it. Maybe even 4 years ago, I would have laughed at you. The fear of being seen and caught for my skills that are not necessarily accepted by society used to be really debilitating for me. And this is despite the fact that I grew up in a household where esoteric practices were a natural part of life. Like, this wasn't something that was foreign to me in any shape or form. So my esoteric and spiritual ways were always something that I hid and that I kept private from everyone else. And I never imagined that it would become my work one day and I would be very public about it and feel quite comfortable doing that as well. So it's been a huge path of growth for me, healing as well, lots of healing around that as well. But the way I kind of really felt propelled to make it more public or come out of my witchy closet, if you will, is that I've always followed my curiosity. So I've studied quite a few modalities, like Reiki and I Ching, and family constellations has been huge for me, but also astrology. So it wasn't until I began offering free readings just for the fun of it. And when I saw the effect that my readings had on people, even though I wasn't, terribly practiced, I realized that I'd never felt so at ease in my own skin. And I felt like the thing that I'm doing, it has purpose and it has meaning more so than anything else I'd ever done. There had been moments here and there where I felt like, okay, maybe this is my thing, but it never really sank, if that makes sense. Like, it wasn't like it. It was sort of like a fleeting moment, more like. So this was about 3 years ago when I started offering free readings, just for the fun of it. And ever since I started doing that, things have changed very quickly for me. It's sort of like I opened the door and then, like, things just started happening and pushing me on this path more and more. And not all of them were pleasant experiences. So now at this point, I really trust what my spirit guides are telling me and where I feel like I'm being pushed to grow and try out. And I just kind of I've stopped trying to control this process. Like, it's beyond my control now. I'm just on this path now. But beyond just understanding your purpose in this material life, and also from a spiritual perspective, my life's mission is actually more about understanding the role of location in a soul's journey. So I've spent more than half of my life living abroad. I was also born abroad. So this work feels most personal to me, but this is something that's also unfolding for me, and not a lot is known about that in the astrology world. It's still in the early stages, I would say. But the readings that I offer and the workshops that I offer, they are a reflection of the things that I'm most concerned with at the moment, so that I'm most obsessed with. And creativity is one of those things, because I've really felt called to kind of understand myself as a creative being in the last year. And so that's how we find ourselves here, actually talking about it with you. And this has also been one of the things that we've connected on. Yeah, so that's how we also connected. I believe at a certain point we were talking about creativity and whether that's something that you're kind of meant to do or not, or what if it's not in like a very prominent thing in your chart. And I thought that was the beginning, I would say,
Yeah.
when yeah, yeah, for me anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, that this is something I feel has been a huge gap for me in terms of my understanding of a chart. So like, and again, we'll talk more about that, but it was confusing for me because I was like, my chart doesn't overly look that way to me. And yet in my life, like it expresses itself all over the place. So I was kind of like,
Mhm.
oh, like this is not something I've seen many astrologers really go into in such a specific way, if that makes sense. It's
Mhm.
kind of, like it's often about relationships and compatibility, something that is fine, but that's not where I'm at right now. Or like kind of more in the context of just like understanding yourself as a whole, but not in a specific way, right? And it's like, oh yeah, just look at your fifth house and that's it. And I was like, that just feels like really lacking somehow. Like there needs to be more here. So
Yeah.
I was really excited when you mentioned that on Instagram. I was like, yes, like this is so needed. Like I think this is such a huge gap that people kind of just skirt over quite quickly,
Mhm.
as a sort of little like trivial thing. But I'm like, actually, like I do believe that everyone is creative in their own way. Like it is human to be creative. It's not like you are or you're not. And in our culture, there is this kind of thing of like, you're either like artistic and creative and you can do it and you have a talent, or you're not. Like, and it's a kind of
Yeah.
weird thing that I'm like, I don't believe that to be true. But I do wonder if, like, yeah, the chart can help you sort of understand this better, and if there could be limitations around reading your own chart, like I was kind of alluding to there, of so I'm sort of jumping ahead a little bit, but I'll touch on it now. So I look at my husband's chart, and his just like screams creativity, right? Like it's like Pisces sun. And again, we'll get into this more in a minute if this doesn't make sense yet. But just for your sort of understanding, like Pisces sun, um, also a stellium in Pisces, a stellium in the 5th house in Scorpio, a Leo moon, like very like clearly like, oh, like, and he is a really creative person and he does that professionally. I was like, that makes so much sense. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but I just kind of, yeah, I was like, but what if someone's chart doesn't have like the obvious like things like Pisces and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So anyway, we'll come to that later. But before we get to that, so yeah, so actually digging a little bit deeper into in fact, before I want to get onto that, there was just something I wanted to touch upon with what you mentioned there around your kind of how you got into this. So something I've also done is I've had a quick look at Catherine's chart. And the thing that I the thing I love so much is like, so you've got the North Node in Pisces in the 8th house, and I'm just like, everything you're saying, and like, I'm like, that makes so much sense there, right? Like, I love, like, of
Yeah.
course, of course that's there. So yeah, like, okay, we'll get into that in a minute as well, around what that actually means, because I know I'm getting excited about that.
You and me both.
Yeah, so if you know what that means also, but if not, we'll explain some other stuff. So yeah, so let's get into that. So if, because we're talking about like creativity here, and how you would look at a chart, like how you would personally look at a chart to understand somebody's like creative expression. So let's say they want to understand sort of how to channel their creativity and their creative expression. What parts of the chart would you look to first, or in general?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for me, there are 4 different starting points that often end up sort of coming together through aspects. One of them is your rising sign. For me, the rising sign is not just how we come across to other people, but it's also our essential motivation in life. And that applies to any aspect of our life. So the rising sign is one. And then what's the ruler of that rising sign? So what is the ruler of your chart? Because that's going to be such a big factor in helping me understand where in your life does your motivation, where do you express your motivation in life. Then it's the 5th house that you also mentioned. That is where we understand how we feel inclined to express our inner world ideas in the outer world through creativity through some type of medium. And then there's Venus, which speaks about our aesthetic taste and our artistic vision. So we can associate a certain style that you may be drawn to, with what in terms of what you feel is beautiful and what other people pick up on in your art or in your creativity. And then there's Neptune, which is more internal, I would say. It's something that it helps us understand where is it that you get your inspiration from, what inspires you to create. And this may not always be something very tangible. It could be just, when you think about creativity in general, like the ideas that you get, they just come out of nowhere suddenly, but they often have a theme that they're somehow connected to one way or another, or some type of root. And so that's what Neptune helps us understand, but it's more of an internal thing that, you find out through a dialogue. And I've noticed that it really makes people think about, like, oh, wow, yeah, that's actually true, but I've never really consciously realized that it's so internal and so like vague, as Neptune tends to be as well. So those are the 4 starting points that I have. And then I look at the house placements, the signs, the rulers of these signs, any aspects that I take into consideration as well to get a full picture. But this is sort of the technical recipe for understanding your creativity through your natal chart. But after a certain point, at least for me, intuition takes over, and the planets and the symbols and the aspects, they all sort of start to create a dance of some sort, and like the essence of that person's creativity comes through for me as a very clear sentence sometimes, or a keyword, or a feeling, and then that's what I end up kind of talking about with the person that I'm reading for. So I do believe that intuition and what feels true for us plays a big role in understanding our creativity or understanding our natal chart. But it's of course often easier said than done, because we start to second guess, like, am I imagining this now, or is this actually what I'm seeing here? Yeah, it's sort of the logical brain wants to take over when there's no need for that, really. So these are the main things that I look for, and there are always surprises as well. Each start is unique, so sometimes we have to talk about the spiritual process of growth that's involved in your creative self. The maybe it's like a comfort zone for you. There are all these like unique situations around creativity for people, and then we dive into that as well. But that will be way too much to get into as sort of like a recipe, I would say.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. Like, I love how clearly I mean, again, this is partly why I love your work, because I have Mercury in Taurus, so I like things to be slow and methodical and like, what do you
Yeah.
mean? What does that look like? Like, I'm not that fast with that stuff. So like something that's really tangible and clear is like really helpful. And I think that even if you have a faster sort of way of learning, like it's really helpful to have something so tangible, because I do find this isn't a criticism, but I find that sometimes people can be quite sort of vague about these things, and I'm like, yeah, but where do I actually look? What's the and when
Mhm.
I've invested in courses that you have done, like you've done that so brilliantly, and I think that
Mm.
is really helpful. Like, I really just want to like just recognize you for that. But B, if you're
Thank you.
listening to this and you kind of want something really tangible, like her courses really do that. So like it's awesome. um
Thank you.
so yeah, I'm really excited to purchase this course that we're going to talk about.
Thank you so much. Well, it means a lot for me that you say that, because I'm incredibly critical of bad teaching. Like, not everyone, well, I'd say there are different ways that you can be good at teaching, and there are different learners as well. So you do need different ways of passing on that information. And this is one of the things that I really take a lot of pride in, that what I'm putting out there makes sense. Like, I don't want it to be something that you just go, what is this? I don't get this, and then just throw it away. That will be the worst scenario for me. So I'm really happy that it's working for you and in the way that you prefer to learn, that there's a match there at least.
Definitely, yeah, and I really don't think I'd be alone with that. I think like practical, tangible, like, yeah, earthy way of doing it, right? I need that anyway. um
Yeah.
so and I realize not everyone's like that, but yeah, I think especially if you're just like starting out, or even if you're just kind of like not brand new, but you're like kind of, and you know a bit but you want to go deeper, like it's such a great way to just don't assume too much and just make things very clear. Like, it's just always, yeah, the way I would approach teaching as well, which how I approach teaching in different contexts. So yeah, so yeah, okay, so talking a little bit about what you were just talking about there. So you mentioned there, so you would look at your rising sign, you would look at the fifth house, you would look at Venus and Neptune. I love that you went into Neptune a little bit more. I think Neptune doesn't get enough um time on the mic, so to speak. Like,
Yeah.
because you think about the seven inner planets, so that's the main ones, right? And then you have the outer planets, which is Neptune, Pluto, and Uranus. And I think they're a little bit more misunderstood. So thank you
Mhm.
for like going into that, because I think even for me, it's taken me a little longer to kind of understand those planets and how they influence us, because they're so slow moving as well. And like,
Mhm.
so they
Mhm.
kind of get a little bit less airtime because they're not constantly doing stuff, or
Yeah.
moving, right? So yeah, thank you for that. And that actually has given me like another way of thinking about Neptune. Um, this is quite a self-indulgent question, which I'm going to ask you. um,
Go.
but like, what it makes me think of is my Neptune. I think you have the same actually. Is in Capricorn, and it's said
Mhm.
that in Capricorn it doesn't doesn't do super well, right? Like, what do you?
Hmm.
I've got a couple of things about this. Like, first of all, like, what do you think of planets? When we talk about planets being in their detriment or in their fall, so that's where they're either like um not
Not
yeah,
happy.
right, yeah. How do you think about those things? Because I think again, I could see for somebody who is fairly new to
Hmm.
reading astrology or charts, that they would like get scared of that or like worried about it. And like, oh, well, that's not a good placement, so that must mean that da 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 da. Does that, yeah,
Yeah.
that make sense? How do you address that with people?
Yeah. Yeah. I completely get that. And I do use dignity, so I do read whether it's in detriment or fall. But I don't take it as a sort of like a death sentence.
Right.
I do, yeah, I do acknowledge that it means that accessing the energy of that planet in that particular area of your life takes a little bit more effort compared to someone else. But my take on any more challenging placements in a chart is that there's a reason for that. There's something about that whole process of understanding your Neptune in Capricorn that you need to go through. And then you may end up having a much deeper understanding of Neptune or Capricorn or the combination of two than someone that has an easy access to that, that they may not even really acknowledge because it's just so natural to them. It just flows, right? So I do find it kind of similar to any tense aspects that you have in your chart, where this is an area that where you are propelled to grow and understand yourself in a new way. And when it comes to Neptune one, then that's understanding your connection to the divine, or where you get your source of inspiration from, or your creativity. And these are not tangible things. And now that we're talking about Neptune, so it's I completely understand why you said that it's harder for you to kind of understand what is Neptune about. I'm in the same process naturally. The ruler of my North Node is Neptune, so
Yeah.
it's a whole thing of trying to understand something that's not very tangible, but that's where some of the most deepest insight can be found, where we really have to work hard at it. But that's my take on it. I don't shy away from hard work and then like having to dig deep, but that's my Scorpio stellium talking. Not everyone is like that. So yeah, so that's my take on it. I don't see it as a death sentence, but rather an opportunity to really grow and go deeper into that aspect of yourself.
I love that so much. I think that's so like that's so helpful. Because yeah, I think that I just really I do see that where people kind of shy away because it's like, oh, that's not helpful, so I won't like
Mhm.
go there or something. It's like this something like that. But actually, like when you see it as like, oh, this is an opportunity for growth, like that might bring challenges, but
Mhm.
challenges also help us grow, and that actually might be ultimately really, really good for us on a soul level.
Mhm.
So
Exactly.
yeah, I love that so much. It's such a good reframe of it. Like I think that's what we need is these reframes of what um our charts mean in general, of like not ever seeing anything as good and bad. It's like they're here for a reason. They're here.
Yeah.
Um, and I, yeah, thank you for that. And I hope anyone listening to that, if that has been you and you've, because I know that some people in who listen to the stuff I do, like they do know their chart a bit. So like, I wonder if this has come up for them. And I just love that to
Mhm.
sort of settle that for them a little bit of like, oh, okay, like it's not so bad. Like it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, when it comes to looking at the planets, then, because you mentioned like Venus and Neptune, something I was always really curious about, although I think I do understand this better now having done your courses, honestly, is where do you like what do you place more importance on? Is it the house that it's in, or is it the
Mhm.
sign that it's in, or is it they're both equally important? Like, what's your kind of take on that? Because obviously the sign and the house
Mhm.
has different interpretations.
Mhm. I look at both for sure. I can't
Mhm.
tell you whether I find one or the other more important, or what's the weight of importance compared to one another. But I do look at both. I also look at the ruler of where this, what, how do I say that? The ruler of the sign where the planet isn't. Wow,
Yes.
what a sentence. uh, Let me make that more understandable for people listening. So if your Neptune is in Capricorn, I look at the ruler of Capricorn and see where is that and what does that tell me to kind of get a deeper understanding there. I also look at aspects, and at a certain point, as I also mentioned, like this is the technical recipe for what is it that you should look at. But then the more you sit in a meditative state with your chart and with that particular planet, the more you start to see connections that you perhaps didn't before. And so it becomes less about, do you look at the sign more, do you look at the house more, or what is it that you look at? And it's more about, what does it make me feel, or what does it bring up for me, or what kind of life experience does it connect with for me? If we take your natal chart as like a self-reflection tool, but the same can apply when you're reading for others, where it's, you don't know that person, but you get a sense from, well, what could this be true, or what could be true for that person with this placement and with these aspects involved. So yeah, it's a vague answer, I realize, but that's the honest
No,
answer.
it's good. Yeah, I don't think it's that's okay, because I think it's important to understand like what you're looking at, because again, like that is the kind of thing that if you're new to looking at stuff, you might get tripped up on,
Hmm.
of like, oh, I need to think about this more because that matters more, or as opposed
Hmm.
to kind of like, okay, I'm going to learn like what these things kind of mean, like, the technical side of it. And then once you have the technical side of it, then you can lean into that kind of intuition. That's what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually it might become more important. Like I think this is a tricky one actually, and again, I'd be curious what you think of this. Do you think it's really important to have that kind of foundational knowledge first of the system before you
Mm.
then lean into the intuition, or can you have the
Mm.
intuition without the technical knowledge?
Mm. Oh, what an interesting question. To be honest, I've never thought about it, so this is going to be an improvised, off the cuff
Sorry to
answer.
throw that spanner in the works.
No, it's okay. No, I love it. Um, well, first of all, I believe some people are much more intuitive than technical. I think that really
Yeah.
comes down to like the emphasis of the left brain, right brain for you. Like which some people are equal in both. Some people are more intuitive, some people are more technical. Well, the more technically oriented, I'm not sure if they would even be open to astrology, to be honest. There has to be some desire or an inclination towards a more abstract thinking, which is interpreting signs and symbols and aspects and archetypes.
Mm.
Um, but I think it really, and this is just a hypothesis, I think we start off by learning the practical or the foundational bits and pieces, but then how you end up relating or connecting more with astrology is very individual. It may become a very intuitive thing for you, and you just completely reject like degrees and all this technical stuff, where someone else might be really 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 good at this stuff, and really see things there, at such a fine level of detail that someone that's more intuitive may not. Here, I'm speaking for myself as well, because I'm not, definitely not very technical. There are all these things that I don't look at, not because I reject them, but because there's already so much information I'm getting without getting lost in like the very hardcore details of a natal chart. And I feel like it's too much to go that deep sometimes, because you just have like an hour and a bit with a client, and you don't want to overwhelm them. You don't want to overwhelm yourself either. So
Yeah.
yeah, a bit of a tangent there, but yeah, that's what I think right now.
Yeah, yeah, I know it is a bit tangential, but it just sort of came up. I saw someone kind of talking about this, and I was like, oh, this is an interesting thing, because
Yeah.
they were very like, no, you must learn this, and I was kind of like, I don't know, I think like I'm curious
Mm.
like about that. I think it's helpful, but yeah, like you're right, it really comes down to the disposition of the person. And I think again, you could look at someone's chart and be like, oh, it's quite obvious that you might be more led this way, because like I'm thinking of a friend who has like South Node in Pisces, like stellium, really, really intuitive. I'm like, yeah, like you wouldn't be as interested in the technical stuff, and she isn't. So I was like, yeah,
Yeah, there you
makes
go.
sense
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
to me. Yeah.
We've settled it.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I'll come away from that. But coming back to the subject at hand. So yeah, so We've kind of touched on this a little bit, but let's say someone is listening to this and they don't think of themselves as being particularly creative, because again, like we've touched on, I do think our culture, certainly Western culture, is quite you are or you're not, right? And you might have got that
Mhm.
message from a young age, or and there's loads of creative wounds as well. Like we that's a whole other subject, but like all of the you alluded to having like kind of a witch wound, and like I think there's similar things with like creativity of like maybe you have tried to be creative when you were younger and then like people are like that looks terrible or that's stupid or some kind of
Yeah.
horrible judgment on something you try to create and you shut that part of you down. um so you might be feeling like, no, I'm not, like because I was told when I was 10 that like I was not good at drawing, so therefore I can't draw, like or whatever, right? But they're listening to this, and clearly if you are listening to this, then there's something in you. I will just say that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
the very fact that you're here means
Yep.
that you are creative and that there is something that is being called to you around this. Like, yeah. So what would you sort of say to them in terms of like, yeah, actually just what would you say to them? What would
Mm.
your take on that be?
Well, first of all, I completely get it because I've been that person my whole life, with the
Yeah.
exception of the last year, maybe, or last 6 months. Well, something like that. I've never seen myself as a creative person because, and that's even though I've spent so much of my time cooking up ideas and making them real through all sorts of mediums that I feel drawn to. Writing and public speaking and coming up with workshops and how I like organize them and decorating my home or planning my garden. Like these are all creative activities, but I've never seen myself as a creative person while doing that. It's something that I just couldn't connect within myself. And it took me a while to understand that that's not true. One of the indications for me was that a lot of my followers are artists themselves. And I was like, okay, but you kind of attract the people that you are. So
Right.
what does that say about me? My husband kept saying, you're a creative person. I'm like, I'm not sure about that. But it is true at the end of the day. Um, so I started looking at my natal chart, going like, am I creative? Do I have anything there? Well, I do, as you know, you've seen my chart.
Yeah.
But I also saw a faulty belief in my chart around creativity, and that is that being creative requires that you're a master of your craft, that you need to be perfect at it. And that is something that I
Mm.
admire and respect so much, that when you've spent 20 years mastering your photography skills or calligraphy skills or whatever it is that you do, that only then you can call yourself creative.
Yeah.
So obviously, there's a whole thing around that, a whole self-limiting baggage of beliefs. So I've been reworking that belief in the past year through astrology, and it's been a great source of liberation for me. And it's helped me understand that we are all creative. It's just that how we express our creativity and what mediums we use that or use that to what mediums we use to express our creativity are just different, and they don't all need to be traditionally creative. They don't need to. You don't need to go to art school to consider yourself creative. It's for me, creativity is more about the ability to approach life with inventiveness and being adaptable, or having this sudden insight or sudden idea and then you make it real. To me, that's creativity. Or solving problems in your daily life or at work. Like all of these things are require creating something that wasn't there before, or creating something that used to be there before but in a new way.
Yes.
So that's something I would probably want to say to my past self and anyone that's listening as
Yeah.
well. And to make it more like astrologically relevant as well, like the fifth house comes after the fourth house. Like if you just look at it like a wheel, in the fourth house we confront our emotional security, our sense of home and belonging, and this cocoon that we're in. And in the fifth house, we sort of step out into the world where we express what was there in the fourth house. So for me, the fifth house is also a type of self exploration through the things that we do for fun, or through creativity, or projects, or hobbies. And so in that sense, it makes a lot of oh, I lost my thought there.
It's okay.
Astrologically relevant. Wow, I completely lost my thought there.
Okay, take your time.
Oh yeah, and so in that sense, the fifth house is like a natural continuation of the fourth house, where we've got our emotional foundation, and then it's about putting it out into the world as a reflection of you, but also as an exploration of you, because creativity isn't just a product; it's also a process within you that ends up being a type of product, in some shape or form.
Yeah. I really thank you for sharing your story on that, because I think there'll be so many people that can really hear themselves in what you said. Like that
I hope
is
so.
yeah, yeah, and like how like and again I love that like you because you came from this like well I'm not really creative and other people around you are kind of mirroring this but you're like no I'm not sure and like your husband who obviously will know you really well um and it's
Yeah.
like but actually the sound from what I'm hearing it was actually yes, there were people confirming that around you, but your chart was what liberated you to realize, like, oh, actually, like I am, and this has been like a huge key for you. And again, I think that's why I love astrology. Like it's about
Mhm.
liberation ultimately. And I love like, yeah, again, I just kind of hope that lands for someone because like that's to me been like the main reason why astrology has been such a huge part of my life and something I'm just so fascinated with because ultimately I want everyone to be freer, more
Yeah,
liberated. Um
same.
yeah, right. So like thank you for sharing that because that's so important to actually have a real life sort of example of that. And you now going on to teach it and yeah, like and sharing it in workshops and doing all of the creative stuff that you actually do, which is awesome. um yeah, I love it. Um actually, this might be a good segue into looking at this is so self-indulgent. I'm so excited about this. So Catherine has really generously offered to have a look at my chart and talk about it. I don't know what she's going to say. So I'm just as curious as you. I don't know what's going to happen. To put all of this into context, really, I think like that's the thing. Like we're talking all about this sort of theoretically, but then like actually putting it into an example, I think really once again just kind of not confirms, like solidifies what we've talked about here. So it makes more sense. So I'll let you lead the way if that's okay.
Yeah, I'll take over from here. So I'd love to like say a few disclaimers before we start. So when I look at your chart, I'm not an expert on you. So I see potentials. I see my own subjective interpretation of how I see your chart. So astrology is not an exact science. It's more the art of interpreting things and then kind of passing on a story about this person. So whatever you hear me say, take what resonates and leave what doesn't. And in the way that I read charts, I prefer that it becomes like a dialogue. So I'll stop every now and then and I'll tell you, or I'll ask you actually whether that's true for you, whether that resonates with you, and then it just becomes this wonderful conversation about you, which I'm excited about.
I'm
So
so
those are
excited.
some.
And I love that people get a bit of a process of how what it's like to work with you here as well. Like, because I think, yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Like, yeah, I'm so excited. Sorry.
It's also no, no, it's fine, and I think it's just important to also create a safe space for people that people often have an idea that the natal chart is like a static thing, and if someone reads it to you and sees something bad, then that must be true. Like, no, that's not it. There's a whole lot of agency involved, free will to change your life for the better, for the worse. There's so much freedom actually, that we still have regardless of what's in the natal chart. And I feel like that's important for me to always start with or lead with, that don't take everything I say as gospel, rather take what resonates and leave everything else. You don't need to make yourself fit someone's subjective interpretation or someone's story about you, essentially. So yeah, that's just something I want to be on the receiving end of, and that's something I want to give others as well. But
Love that.
let's dive in then.
Awesome.
So one thing that I just have to debunk right out of the gate, and you've mentioned it a couple of times now, is that your chart doesn't scream creativity. I disagree with that completely. Yeah,
Interesting.
for me, there are just so many indications that being an artist or being creative in some shape or form is part of your path in life, not just personally, not just professionally, but also spiritually speaking. And so this is where I see it. So as I mentioned, I start with the rising sign, and yours is in Libra. And Libra is known as this person that's very good at connecting with people and sort of mediating between people dynamics, but they're also really motivated by creating beauty. And beauty can be subjective, but it can also be expressed through art, through some sort of creative medium. So that's my first indication, or that I see in your chart, where your basic motivation in life may be people focused, but maybe also related to creativity as such. This makes the ruler of your chart Venus. And where do we find it? We find it in your 10th house of your career. And so to me, that indicates, and I'm sure you know that, that creativity is part of how you want to be known professionally as well. Whether or not you're an artist per se is irrelevant there, but that the profession that you're known for has an element of being creative, or of a unique expression of how you see the world, or what you want to create. So that's something that I see you being quite ambitious and driven by, that you're known as a creative soul at the very least. Does that hold true for you?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
definitely. And yeah, like I probably should just preface here as well, like, so that was my beliefs. I don't actually
Uh,
think that now, but I did, like, before I knew better and stuff, right? So I was
yeah.
I guess I was thinking of like how easy it could be to think that without knowing more. So
Mhm.
yeah, but no, that absolutely yeah, and I think I mentioned this in our messages because we talked a little bit about our charts before this conversation, and I was like, I have such an ego around this. Like, I need people to know I'm creative. Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
there's a real
Yeah.
thing for me of like, I want you to see me that way, and I was like, I want my chart to reflect this and that. Like,
Mhm.
so yeah,
Mhm.
for sure, really
It
resonates.
does. It does. Because the 10th house is the most prominent place to have your chart ruler. It really is. And so that is the most public thing that people will know about you. It's what you're known professionally, or what the type of legacy, if you will, that you want to leave behind. And that is partly your creativity. But that's just the facet of you. That's not the whole you.
Oh.
Right?
Yes.
um, Yes, but that's your rising sign. So this is like the general motivation in life. Let's move on to the 5th house, which is more commonly talked about in terms of creativity. And yours is in Aquarius, and I love a good Aquarius. So the 5th house talks about how you express your creativity, what motivates you, creatively speaking. And Aquarius, or Aquarian type people, their soul is motivated by looking to the future, making sure that what they create either challenges the current status quo or the social norms right now, and that shaking up of those social norms creates something better for people involved, a collective or a community, or an imagined community. It doesn't need to be physical people around you in a room, but it can be. Aquarian self-expression generally or typically involves using technology of some sort. So internet is one way. Hi. And
Yes.
then and then cameras as well. Anything that's digital, like digital tools for creating things. So there's technology is something that is not old school. It is something that's used for creative self-expression. I don't know if you use anything else. Well, I know that you share your work on the internet, but is there something else that you also use technology wise, or?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because when I first read, like, again, this is going back a while now. So like just kind
Mhm.
of where I was then. Because at first I was like, I was a bit like, oh well, like I don't know, like technology just sounds a bit like okay, whatever. Like I use a video or whatever. I was like, it didn't feel like that exciting to me because I'm also like a performer, I'm a singer,
Mhm.
so like I do that sort of thing. And I was like, I just didn't really connect there. But then I was like, actually, what made sense was like yeah, like more experimental music, right? So like
Ah.
using
Mhm.
technology in that way, using like I'm really drawn to using different like I won't get into the technical stuff here, but like using different things for live performance, where it's not just like a traditional band, it's like we have other elements and that kind of thing. And I was like, like that rings
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
um,
That's exciting.
yeah, and also the kind of Aquarian, like, definitely have this sort of rebellious, as I see it in myself anyway, like this sort of not wanting to do with the status quo like thing, right? Um, but and it was really interesting because you talked about this right at the beginning. I also had this huge witch wound thing going on
Mm.
where I did not want to share anything publicly. I was like really afraid around I honestly think I've been persecuted in a past life around this because it was so strong. Like
Mhm.
this intense fear of revealing this kind of side of me that's more, reads
Mhm.
tarot, is interested in astrology, hermeticism, like all of this stuff that I was secretly like not telling anyone that I was studying. But there was
Yeah.
a huge wound. But then it was like, but you need to share this. Honestly, the download was just like, you need to share this on YouTube. Like it was that direct. It was like, it wasn't anywhere else. It was like,
Mm.
YouTube is where you need to be. You need to do it publicly by video, like that. People need to see you. Like that was very much how it wanted to express
Yeah.
itself, was not so
Yeah.
much through writing, but more through, I mean, that may change or whatever. But at this point, it was
Mhm.
like, needs to be, yeah, like this more, people need to see you. That was really the big
Mhm.
part. And I was like, but then they'll actually see it's me. I can't pretend I'm somebody else. Like I'm gonna get persecuted because it's me. Like there's
Yeah.
no hiding,
Yeah.
But that was like I ignored it and do all of that stuff. And then you're like, okay, I surrender. I get it. Like this is clearly something I have to do. I feel
Mhm.
like that's been a big thing for me. Like all of the things I've ended up doing have all been me kicking and screaming about it though.
I
Like,
love the
I
image
really
of that.
like didn't want to perform publicly. I didn't there's this whole thing about being public, but I was also like, no,
Yeah.
like people are gonna kill you. Like that was what it
Yeah.
felt like, right? Um,
Yeah.
really that deeply, like that kind of persecution. So a lot
Mhm.
of healing had to happen around that. But yeah.
Mm.
So it's interesting you mentioned that because I was like, I really get it. Like,
Yeah, I didn't know that about you, so thank you for sharing that as well. And I have so much respect for people who do things even though they're kicking and screaming. Like it's my favorite kind of way of life, I guess. So yeah, keep doing that, please. Um,
yeah.
yeah, but I was gonna ask you about the experimental music because I know you're a musician as well, but I don't know. I'm not familiar with your music. I do know about your YouTube because I follow it myself. So I was gonna ask if there is something experimental about that. Now I'm gonna go and listen to your music afterwards to see what does it mean. But it's good to know that there's some connection there with how you use technology beyond just social media. And the other thing was, so Aquarians are also associated with New Age or esoteric or this sort of astrology, tarot type of tools, and that's something that I know is true for you already. So I didn't want to lead with that because that's the easiest one. Like I already know this about you. So this, yeah, you're someone that has leaned into several areas of how your creativity expresses itself. One thing I wanted to ask you was, what is it? What is the change that you sort of want to see? What propels you to challenge the status quo, or what kind of status quo are you rebelling against?
That's a good question. I do think a lot of it is around, um, yeah, actually, honestly, the way I see it is like I think there's sort of archaic structures that have been around for a long time that are just, and
Hmm.
like the leaders that we have are not
Hmm.
very inspiring, and no one really feels like there are really leaders anymore, that we
Hmm.
actually want to look up to. I know in the UK it's very apathetic in terms of um who, like, no one really cares whether it's Labour or Conservative because it's just like, well, it's all just
Hmm.
a system that we're kind of in that doesn't work anymore, and it's kind of not gone away, but it's, yeah, like something new needs to come in. And I
Hmm.
think that the way the newness is coming in is in these more kind of esoteric arts, which
Hmm.
makes total sense, right? Because that's the
Yeah.
Aquarian way. That's like Pluto and Aquarius as well. Like that's very much the direct, and we're
Mhm.
only at the very beginning of Pluto
Yep.
and Aquarius. So for a little bit of context for that, just in case that doesn't mean anything to those listening, it's entering a new age, right? A new like 20-year span ish of like Pluto being in a new sign. We are technically still in Pluto and Capricorn right now, but we're going to move into Aquarius for the final time. It's going to stay there. But yeah, it's like, oh, this is at the very beginning of this
Mhm.
very new way that we're going to be like transforming and things are going to be changing. That's Pluto's transformation. So it's like, I think being at the forefront of that is part of how the change I want to see.
Mhm.
And this is a little bit of a tangent, but something I do think, in case anyone listening is actually interested in this themselves, which they probably are if they're listening to this, of like seeing themselves in that, of being a leader in that way, or however, maybe, that it's really not too late. Like something I really feel like is important to say is like people might think, oh, well, YouTube started 20 years ago, so it's too late to start on that, or social media apps have been around for a while, so there's no point in doing that. It's all like whatever. But the thing I like to remind myself of is like, well, things, just because they've grown a lot doesn't mean there's not like a lot more room for that
Yeah.
to grow, right? Like you might actually be right at the beginning. You're just seeing the very, very beginning of it and not realizing that that's the beginning. You think it's peaked. Think about like Bitcoin. That's like a weird example, but like people thought it peaked and it was like it did not. Like there was so much more you could have got in on, but you might have allowed that thought of like, oh, like it's already happened, so I've missed it and I just won't bother. I would really I really don't think that's the case with this stuff. I think we're at the beginning of it. We're only now starting to see more people kind of stepping out of the spiritual closet, so to speak. Like, yes, it's been around for a while, but it's also been really underground and it's not
Yeah.
been public. So I think that, I don't know if that answers the question fully, but I think that's a big part of like, I don't want to do things the way things have been done. I'm not like a completely rejection of traditional stuff entirely, but there is just
Mhm.
like that way of
Mhm.
helping people and healing is not like, just like it's not really working for us anymore. We need a new way.
Yeah.
But
I
it
love that.
means being really brave. It means having a lot of courage. It means being willing to have people hate you and all of that stuff. Like that, it's not easy, but it's like I think that's the calling of the courage and the bravery that's really, really needed right now. Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Ooh,
community.
preach.
But the community is what really helps, isn't it? Because then it's like you're not alone. You're not like, oh, I'm the only one around me. Because I know that for me, this was again, I feel this is important to say, so I'll stop in a minute. But but for me, it was like I felt like the only one who was interested in this, which is why it was so scary. Because it's like there's no one else around me, kind of
Mhm.
doing this, so maybe I'm crazy, or like like these feelings of like this is why we need community, which again Aquarius is really centered around that community, because then it's not as scary to actually step up because we're doing it with other
Mhm.
people. So even if you are being persecuted on the outside, you're not actually alone. You have other people that are the same kind of thought processes as you, and and yeah, I think that's so important. Community now more than ever, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I just saw your whole chart come alive now. I oh, I shouldn't have asked you that question. But no, it makes perfect sense what you're saying. I I was particularly fascinated by Saturn in your fifth house and how that
Mm,
manifests for you, because that can be, it can be a reflection of fear and self-doubt and feeling restricted by external circumstances in expressing your unique vision for the future. So it could be that, or it sounds like you've overcome a lot of that. You've come such a long way already in overcoming that, but now it's just about the duty of it and applying yourself and the discipline of keeping at it, in the name of the vision that you have for the future. And we don't know what the future will be. We don't know what Pluto and Aquarius is really going to bring our way. But being committed to a change of some kind, that feels good for you, is something that, duty calls for you, I would say. and that
Yeah.
is through your creativity and then the work that you do now on YouTube, but also as a musician, I would imagine. Um, yeah. So one thing I wanted to add about that, so the ruler of your fifth house is Uranus, and it lands in your fourth house. And actually, there's quite a few connections that lead me back to, or lead you back to, I'm not sure how to say it, to the fourth house. Your Neptune is there as well. Your North Node is there. So how should I start? On the one hand, it seems that your home life, your inner sanctuary, is the place for your inspiration, your creativity, and then at the same time, it seems, and I wanna hear if that's true for you. It seems that some of these traditional ways of thinking about home and emotional security, our roots and ancestors, and how families are um, thought of, or what we consider as traditional, are also subjects that you may want to kind of shake up. Is that true for you at all, or does that connect with you in any sort of way?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
I think, yeah, like there's other things that are unrelated to creativity that I'm aware of in my fourth house that like, yeah, so family systems and me
Hmm.
being kind of someone who maybe broke some of the kind of you know, like what am I
Hmm.
trying to say? I feel like you know what I'm trying to say. um
Generational,
that's
what is
the
it
one.
called?
Generational
Generational
trauma,
traumas.
right.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly, and, like, being, yeah, like, being quite sort of yeah, doing things differently and, like, not and that being painful, honestly, but
Mhm.
necessary, and, like, a huge part of my growth has been actually asserting my own boundaries in that area and, like, um but came a lot of yeah, a lot of kind of pain
Mhm.
with that as well, and which I'm
Mhm.
happy to talk about, by the way, just so you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
so yeah, like, and I really do see that of kind of, yeah, me, um, needing to lean into that as part of my why I'm here, of, like, doing things differently in that way, like, around yeah, and creating my own sense of emotional safety and stability in my own way, in the
Mhm.
absence of, um, maybe, like, caregivers doing that, really. So it's kind of it's
Mhm.
been more me finding my own way of doing that has been, yeah, important for me.
Mhm.
I don't know if that quite answers the
Mhm.
question, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, you confirmed that it is important and that has really shaped you in many ways. And one of the things I was wondering is whether one day, when our North Node activation happens at 42, that you feel called to channel what you've learned and how you've grown into your music, or even in the topics that you use for your tarot readings or astrology readings. It may be too soon for you to connect with that part of yourself, but it's just looking at how much activity there is for you creatively speaking. Your Uranus is there, Neptune is there, your North Node is there. It seems like that might be something that you feel called to do one day. But I don't know if that's anything that, sparks something in you today, as we're speaking now.
It feels like a whisper now
Ah,
rather than like
okay.
a now. But, as you're
Yeah.
saying, I'm like, "Yeah, that's coming." I feel it coming. It's
Okay.
that kind of feeling,
Okay.
which makes sense, right, with the North Node and being at
Yeah.
42, like, yeah, I've got a few years away from that, so I feel like,
Mhm.
there's more here, but there's more healing that needs to happen, I think, first,
Yeah.
is my instinct around yeah, it would be I'm very conscious of not, when it comes to my own sort of stuff of like not sharing while I'm still in things too much. Like
Mhm.
to a point, yes, but like, yeah, you've got to be
Yeah.
careful with your own kind of yeah, like I'm too in it to really share any wisdom around it, right?
Mhm.
Something like that.
Mhm.
But I feel like there will come a point where that
Mhm.
changes and that heals and that shifts and it becomes this power of like it's a source of power, a kind of a message that
Yeah.
needs to be delivered, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I'm excited for that, for sure. And what I've noticed that is that the more you're in tune with how should I say, your natal chart, or the way the planets move, when you're aware of what your north node is, even you start to kind of feel the rumblings of the siren call before you even turn 42. I'm a couple of years older than you, and I'm already feeling it, even though I don't have the full grasp of it yet.
Interesting.
But just anyone that knows about the north node or their north node, the more you can understand its message to the extent that it's possible, beforehand, before it gets really activated at 42, the more you're able to, or the more you're able to ease the way, or ease your midlife crisis, essentially, because you're already working on that. You can, as you beautifully said, you can hear the whisper, listen to that whisper, don't ignore it. You
Yeah.
don't have to go all in already now, but just take it seriously and see where does that take you, just
Mm,
personally, to start with. It doesn't need to become your career. It doesn't need to become something that you earn money with, but just don't ignore the little whisper there.
yeah.
So when things are more ripe for you, you may find that memories from your childhood or your family, your dreams, or your innermost emotions or nostalgic feelings become the biggest source of your inspiration, truly. And there's something about that that um, may make people feel like the old way is dead, and it's the new way that we want to feel at home and feel at peace and feel safe and comforted. I'm going to use that sentence as a segue to move on to your Venus, which is in the 10th house of Cancer, 10th house and in Cancer. So typically, Venus talks about your aesthetic taste and your creative vision, so the style that we can associate with you and the style that you feel most, that you find most appealing. But I just want to mention that when it's in Cancer, that brings up this desire that your art or your creativity creates or evokes a sense of warmth and comfort and love and protection in the people that are taking it in. So think about cozy things like your home. Like I look at your background there and I feel cozy and I feel like I want to be there. Like it's things like that that become that we can associate with your style. So it could be that you you keep doing your work from home, for instance, or that in the music that you create, there's that sense of love and warmth and nurturance that you want to give to people through your words and through your melodies. So this is something that we can probably associate now with you, but also in the future, even more so the more you work on yourself and work on healing yourself. And you probably will take a lot of, or even may even be the case now, that you take a lot of pride in being known as a nurturing, creative presence for others. And even though I don't know you very well, just have some chats with you, the way that you have held me in the last couple of weeks as we've planned this collaboration, I have felt that, and I was wondering where that was coming from. But now, as I really looked at your chart, I'm like, it makes sense. It makes sense. So I just want to say that it's already there, and I don't know how conscious you are of it, but it's something that you're here to share with the world and be known for.
Yeah.
How does that
Yeah.
make you feel?
Really seen. That's really lovely. Like, really, yeah, that's really lovely to hear and very affirming. Yeah, I think it is important for me to be quite gentle in my approach. I mean, it's interesting because I do have quite a fiery Mars. So there is an aspect of me that can be very like
Yeah.
like so I'm not all just like gentle and that's it, but I
Yeah.
do think in the context of this work, it's I don't love the tough love thing too much.
Mhm.
There's a place for it. I do think that, and I think that some people have that kind of approach, and that's great. I don't think it's like bad, and I love fiery people, so I'm really not like, you know, against
Yeah.
that. But yeah, I do think that in this stuff, it's been I've worked with people like one to one for about 10 years now in a different context to this actually. So I've worked as a coach, like in fitness professional, but
Mm.
I'm not really doing that so much anymore. Um, but I honestly like immediately discovered that it was like, oh, like I'm not really here to teach you how to deadlift. Like, okay, like fine, like we'll go through that. But actually, I'm here to hold the space for you. Like it was all
Mhm.
about this space holding and permission giving. Like I think
Mhm.
that's what I do best. And it doesn't seem to matter what context it's in. That's just
Yeah.
what ends up happening.
Yeah.
Because I do think I truly see in other people their, like, it sounds a little bit grandiose, but like potential, right? I'm like, I see something in you, right? I really do see that. And I'm just like, you can do it. Like, and not in a you can do it, let's go. Like it's more like, no, like I really see like how possible this is for you. And I feel like someone just needs you to allow you to do it or something. If you can't give yourself that permission, I will give you that permission to do it. And
Mm,
as long as it's right for you, like, and it's true for you, it's like that kind of thing. And like, just, again, in that context of fitness, it's like, you think it's going to be about like, what you need to eat and how you need to train. And that's important, but it's more like
yeah.
someone is actually going through a transformation. Like that's what's actually happening. And you don't realize that at first when you get into that job. But when you do
Yeah.
it, you're like, oh, like I'm just here to support you as a person going through whatever challenges you're going through emotionally. Like,
Hmm.
I don't think all fitness professionals see it like this, but that's how I saw it. And I was like, oh, like that's what I do well. And I see that really translate well here as well. Like, again, the context is different, but
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
fundamentally doing the same kind of thing, which is just being
Absolutely.
like, I love you and I really do. Like I love you and I see you and I just want to be like, I mean, I see the cancer really come out in me here because like I'm like the mother of just like, I just want to help, just give you anything you want. Like that kind of like that kind, I always think like cancer's the moon, which is the mother. And it's like, um, just like the mother that just wants to give their babies like everything, like you can have anything, you can do anything. And then like the father's like, well, you can't do everything though. That's Saturn, right?
Yes.
But I'm much more on the just do anything, it's fine, and I'll love you through it, and it's gonna be great.
Love that.
Yeah. So that
But
comes out.
I'm pretty sure that that makes sense. And I think you're probably going to, and I'm not a fortune teller, just a huge disclaimer, but just as I'm listening to you and my own feeling of your chart and where your moon, the ruler of your 10th house is in Scorpio. So I suspect that the more you listen to that whisper of what is going on in your inner world in relation to your family, the healing that you feel that still needs to happen, that the more you understand and see yourself and nurture yourself through that, the more you're able to be there for others for much deeper topics potentially. We know, I don't know which topic specifically, but that your tarot readings, your astrology may become so much more deeper and profound than it already is, because there's a way for you to, first of all, be a source of change, or an agent of change, as the Aquarian fifth houser that you are, but also to help them transform and really dig into the deeper stuff that may be going on for them. So I think that's so on point, that in a context of like a gym, or I don't know where you held these sessions, but like in the context of fitness, you were able to tap into the much deeper stuff that may be going on for them and just holding a space for that. And so it could be that the more you heal, the more you understand yourself and your purpose, the more you're able to meet others on an even deeper level that you've already been able to do, and create that safe space for them. And potentially that may, translate into your art as well. But let's see how life goes. I feel like there's so many different paths for you that are
Yeah.
possible, and it's, free will is what will decide at the end of the day, what you feel called to do more in the future. This is
Yeah.
still turned into a future, like a future, a fortune telling thing. Wasn't the purpose, but that's what
No.
happened.
No, I'm not hearing it like that either, though. I know why you said that, but I'm not. Yeah, because I'm also conscious of the more fortune telling side of things, but I'm not hearing it like that. I think it's
Okay,
more just
good.
like a potential and like this. Yeah, it's not like this is going to happen at this date and da da. No, like
Good.
I don't do readings like that either. Like it's not. not how I like to use sort of tarot and astrology. Really, it's more about supporting where we are, and yeah, and understanding things
Yeah.
better. And yeah, I think you're doing that brilliantly. I really don't feel like you've veered into a
Good.
different thing here.
Good.
And actually, this is a bit of a tangent, but I do think it's just worth mentioning. So you talk quite a lot there about my fourth house and how the North Node is there, and that being, and we
Mhm.
talked quite a bit about that. For those listening, if that piqued your interest, Catherine does have a course on the North and South
That's right.
Node.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to mention that because I bought that and it was really helpful. Um, and I am obsessed with the nodes. I just think they're so fascinating and endlessly interesting. um, so if that's something that really speaks to you, and when you were listening to that part of the conversation, do you want to talk about it a little bit more here, actually, just while we're here?
Yeah, yeah, I can do that. So I do have a self-study course where you can dive into your spiritual path in life. So this is, I've called it the soul's purpose, and people mix that up with what can I do for work that feels meaningful. But this is strictly your spiritual growth path, and you may manifest through your work, but it may also not. This is something that you'll then find out. But a lot of that course does revolve around our south nodes, our spiritual comfort zone, the things that we already feel good about doing or that we're comfortable doing. That's our kind of our modus operandi. And then our spiritual growth direction, which is represented by the North Node. And this is the jungle. This is what makes us terrified, at first even repulsed by, or we feel repulsed by that way of being and thinking and just acting. But it's a process that we all go through. And for those wondering about why 42, why does the North Node activate at 42? Well, we associate it in popular culture with the midlife crisis. It's sort of like this midpoint, sort of. For some, it's not the midpoint, but anyway, in our life where we get to, where we're asked to actually see if we're on the right path, if we've done things in the way that feels most comfortable to us, spiritually, personally, professionally, or do we want to course correct? We always have free will in not taking up that call. We have many lifetimes ahead of us to try again, if you will. But if we do feel like the way that we've always operated up until we hit 42, or even a couple of years before that, then this is a crucial time where we can find a lot of inspiration and guidance in understanding our North Node. And so that course helps you kind of dive deeper into, well, what is your soul here to really understand and master, by entering a whole new way of being and thinking and acting in the world. So it's a deeply spiritual practice and not something you'll get in one go. You'll have a whole lifetime to understand it, but it's a start anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to kind of add to that, I think it's, yeah, A, just a really good starting point. But B, if you do decide to purchase the course and then you still just want a deeper reading, like Catherine also does offer like a more in-depth interpretation of your chart. Obviously, that goes without saying, but specifically around that, if you wanted to just go even deeper on that subject, and as you've seen today, like this, your approach is so lovely. You're so good at this. I just have to
Thank
say.
you.
It's
Thank you so
like,
much.
yeah, it's honestly like you really help people feel so seen and so gentle, and so you're listening really well, and I love it. Like, I really think you're so natural at
Thank
this.
you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Um, yeah. So what is the best way for people to work with you in terms of like how they find you? What is your Instagram, and what other offerings are you putting out at the moment that you want people to know more about and you could talk about here?
Yeah, sure. So the Foxhill Witch is how you'll find me. My website is thefoxhillwitch.com, and it's the same handle on Instagram, so you can get more familiar with me and get used to my style and my vibe. And if you feel the call, you can book a reading with me. A lot of the topics that I engage in, we've already covered today. So if any of these pique your interest, then that's what we can dive deeper into with your chart. But lately, I really I've been feeling called to create more workshops that are live, in person here in Estonia, where I'm based, but also virtually. And so two topics that I'm most excited by right now is astrocartography. So if you're someone looking to relocate or looking to understand where you're based right now and if it's the best place for you, then that will be a workshop that you can join very soon. And then another one is on creativity. So if you are an aspiring artist or you're an existing or an established artist already, so you consider yourself a creative person, let's put it that way, then this is a course where you can really dive deeper into your creativity, how it manifests, what sort of channels could you use if you wanted to share it with the world, if you wanted to monetize your art, what could you do so that it would be um, feel most aligned to you, feel most natural to you. Just like you said, Sarah, that you just felt like I'm going to do this on YouTube. Those answers are also in your natal chart, and we can dive into what those channels could be that you feel naturally drawn to rather than feeling like you're a slave of, I don't know, algorithms or things like that.
Yeah.
So it's a deep dive into your creative self, more an aspirational course as opposed to let's have a look at all your darkest, deepest feelings. Not everything needs to be terribly serious and not fun. So I think it's going to be a very, very inspiring and light and just an all around exciting workshop that I'm excited about offering very soon as well. And the way that you can, I'm not ready to open the doors for that yet, but the way that you can stay in touch, and also if you wanted to get a head start and find out what sort of creative mediums that you're most attracted to or potentially already talented in, then you can download my free guide around that, and you'll find that on thefoxhillwitch.com/creativity. And then you can drop your email there, and then you'll get the mini guide in your inbox. And then any updates on when I'm ready to open the doors to the workshop will also be sent your way when I'm ready. So yeah, lots of opportunities coming up to work with me. And considering how much I've connected with you, Sarah, I just know that the people that will come from you or through you will be exactly my kind of people. So I'm excited for that, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I really think that people are going to get a lot from this. You've given away so much like valuable information, and I'm just honestly so grateful for that. You've been so clear, so yeah, I know I've said it like 100 times, but I just cannot stress that enough, like how refreshing that is, and how much I just really love that approach. And yeah, I feel like people are going to come away from this like really like way more knowledgeable than they were in just such a short space of time, and that's huge, you know. um
Mm.
and I do, yeah, also just as another thing, if you sign up to Catherine's like notifications for workshops and stuff, you'll also get your newsletter, which is really good as well.
Oh
um
yeah, that's true.
so yeah, you do, is it bi-weekly newsletter that you do, that talks all
Yeah,
about
that's
the
true.
transits, and you know, and again, just it's a really really good read, and very, again, very beautiful, like you just do things so beautifully.
Oh, this music to my ears. Thank you. Thank you. You are nurturing my inner artist here, and I feel like my inner artist is still a baby in some sense. And the way that you're just like complimenting me, I'm like, oh, it just really touches my heart. Thank you for that.
Oh, it's honestly, it's the easiest thing for me to do, because I just see like you're just so good at it. You're so good at it. You're so talented, and it's amazing. And thank you for sharing your gifts and not sort of shying away from what you know you're here to do. That's honestly like the biggest gift, is that
Likewise.
it would be so easy for you to just be like, that's too scary, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but you didn't, and like thank you, like we need this, we need you, we need your voice, we need your taste, we need your style, we need, you know, like I know astrology could be everywhere, but we don't have you, and that's amazing. So thank you for doing the brave and courageous thing, because I know that's been
Thank you.
hard for you, and
Yeah.
it's really
Yeah.
tough, but you're doing the tough work, and yeah, that's awesome. Really proud of you.
Thank you.
It sounds like you're
Oh,
like, I
sound like my mom, my spiritual mom, my witchy mom.
am.
No, I'm here for it. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate the nurturance that you bring into this work. I've not seen this before. Like I appreciate the way that you bring emotion and feeling and nurturance into esoterics. It's there, but in the way that you do it, it's just completely new to me. And so I want to commend you for not shying away from this. So I guess we're a sisterhood of like, do it kicking and screaming, and then you'll be happy. So if anyone's listening, you're probably the same way. Don't
Yeah.
even think you're not. You are.
So true.
You can do it. You really, really can do it. Even if
Yes.
you're kicking and screaming.
Yeah, that's a great message because yeah, I have to be kicking and screaming, it seems. Like that does just it starts that way and then eventually I surrender, but I will fight it. I will. Like I have a fighter in me that's just like, no, like
Yeah.
and then it just doesn't go away and then it's just like niggling here forever until I do it and then
Yeah.
actually it brings a lot of relief because I'm like, oh god, that's gone now. Like, that
Yeah.
part, okay,
Yeah.
I still have challenges, but it's way worse having those voices that are just constantly on your back, being like, "You've not done it yet. You've not done it yet."
Yeah.
So much harder. So much harder.
I
So yeah, if
agree.
anyone else is hearing that, like truly, like taking the leap is hard, but it's easier than that. Like if you're
Yeah.
already having a hard time with this voice, like, and I know that to be true because it doesn't go away. Like really,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, I'll wrap it up there. But again, thank you so much. This has been I knew this was going to be an amazing conversation. I'm just
Same.
so honored. And yeah, go follow her, follow all of her work. It's awesome. And yeah, maybe we'll speak again sometime. I would love to. Anyway, it's been such an amazing conversation. I loved it.
Likewise. Thank you so much for this time together. And yeah, we'll see where this takes us both. What's next for us?
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Mwah. Bye.